Living in the colorful and bustling city of Lima, Juliane Koepcke led a dual life, one foot in the urban environment and the other in the depths of the Amazon rainforest. Despite her jungle experience, she was, at her core, a schoolgirl. Her life oscillated between vacations in the exotic Panguana and school life in Lima. Juliane's parents, Maria and Hans Wilhelm Koepcke, were prominent zoologists. Her mother was also an ornithologist of considerable repute, while her father was famous for his research in the field of entomology. They had founded the Panguana Ecological Research Station in the heart of the Peruvian Amazon. It was there, surrounded by the verdant abundance of nature, where Juliane spent much of her formative years learning the rhythms of the rainforest and gaining a deep understanding of its inhabitants. In December 1971, Maria planned an early return to Pucallpa, a city close to the Panguana Reserve, where her husband was waiting for them. However, the adolescent Juliane found herself torn between the call of the wilderness and the compelling allure of her social life in Lima. There were two significant events on her social calendar that she did not want to miss: a school dance and her high school graduation ceremony, scheduled for the 22nd and 23rd of December, respectively. After some pleading and persuasion, Juliane managed to convince her mother to delay their travel. With reluctance, Maria agreed to her daughter's wishes. Their journey was consequently rescheduled for the 24th of December, granting Juliane the opportunity to attend these milestone events. On Christmas Eve, mother and daughter arrived at Lima's bustling airport. Due to several flight cancellations from the previous day, the terminal was in chaos. Hundreds of passengers milled around the ticket counters, their voices merging into a cacophonous symphony of frustration and impatience. As their boarding time of 11 a.m. approached, Maria and Juliane joined the stream of passengers, unaware of the fateful journey that lay ahead. Juliane, a habitual window-seater, occupied her favorite spot, her mother seated adjacent to her, while a hefty man claimed the aisle seat. Her mother, an ornithologist, found it unsettling to fly, voicing her opinion about the unnaturality of a metallic bird soaring into the sky. The initial half of their hour-long journey from Lima to Pucallpa was calm and monotonous. The routine serving of a sandwich and a drink took place without incident. However, a mere 10 minutes later, as the crew started tidying up, they were engulfed in a formidable thunderstorm. Daylight surrendered to darkness as violent lightning slashed the sky from all directions. The airplane shuddered violently under the wrath of the storm, and passengers gasped in terror. Overhead compartments betrayed their contents, spewing bags, wrapped presents, and articles of clothing. Screams and cries filled the airplane. "Hopefully this goes all right," Juliane's mother murmured nervously. Then, Juliane spotted a dazzling white light over the right wing. She could not discern whether it was a flash of lightning or a horrific explosion. The airplane started its terrifying descent. From her position near the back, she could see straight down the aisle into the cockpit and pilots in panic. A deafening roar filled her ears, her head, her entire being. Amidst the cacophony, she heard her mother say calmly, "Now it's all over." The airplane was plummeting rapidly. The cacophony of screams and the roar of the turbines abruptly faded into a chilling silence. Juliane found herself mysteriously alone, no longer in the plane, her mother absent from her side. Strapped to her seat on the bench, she was suspended approximately 10,000 feet above the ground, plummeting in solitude through the sky. The surroundings were devoid of any discernible detail. She was consumed by the eerie silence of her free fall. The seatbelt constricted her abdomen with a vice-like grip, choking her breath. Fear was about to seize her, but darkness fell before it could grip her fully. She lost consciousness. When she awoke, she was still in a downward spiral, the Peruvian rainforest spinning beneath her. The treetops, densely crowded, appeared to her like clusters of broccolis. A foggy vision enveloped her before she succumbed to unconsciousness again. When Juliane stirred back to life, she found herself nestled in the heart of the jungle. The seatbelt was unbuckled, indicating that she had woken up at some point. She had crawled deeper into the protective hold of the 3-seat bench that had been attached to her during her heavenly descent. Scared, wet, and smeared with mud, she lay there throughout the day and night. The morning greeted her with an unforgettable sight. The tops of the towering trees above her, bathed in a golden light, cast a green glow over everything. But an intense feeling of abandonment, helplessness, and isolation swelled within her. Her mother's seat next to her was vacant. She was incapable of standing up. The faint ticking of her watch reached her ears, but she couldn't make out the time. Her vision was skewed. Her left eye was swollen shut, leaving her to rely on a thin slit of visibility in her right eye. Despite her impairment, she finally managed to decipher the time. It was 9 a.m. Dizziness overwhelmed her again, and she collapsed onto the rainforest floor, exhausted. After a while, she mustered the strength to lift herself onto her knees, only to be assailed by vertigo that forced her to lie back down. She tried again, managing to maintain the kneeling position. Touching her right collarbone, she realized it was unmistakably broken. A deep gash marked her left calf, seemingly inflicted by a rough metal edge, but oddly, it wasn't bleeding. Positioned on all fours, Juliane began to crawl around, her desperate cries for her mother echoing amidst the trees. She received no response, only the cacophonous responses of the jungle's inhabitants. To an outsider, the rainforest could present an intimidating facade. Towering trees cast an intricate lattice of shadows. A constant drip echoed through the dense foliage, marking the rhythm of the jungle. An earthy aroma lingered in the air, a testament to the cycle of life and decay among the entangled plant life. The jungle was a domain ruled by insects. Juliane encountered the full breadth of this tiny kingdom. Ants, beetles, butterflies, grasshoppers, mosquitoes. A particular species of fly were notorious for laying eggs under the skin or within wounds. Stingless wild bees demonstrated a fondness for clinging onto hair. Fortunately, Juliane's childhood experiences in the jungle had made her familiar with its bugs and creatures that scampered, rustled, whistled, and snarled in the undergrowth. Her parents had passed down almost every bit of jungle knowledge to her, which she now had to excavate from her concussion-addled memory. Suddenly, a powerful thirst seized her. Thick droplets of water adorned the leaves around her, and she lapped them up eagerly. She paced in small circles around her seat, aware of how easily one could lose orientation in the jungle's labyrinthine depths. She committed to memory the location and unique features of a tree, using it as a compass. She found no remnants of the crash, no wreckage, no people. However, she did stumble upon a bag of candy, from which she ate a piece. The droning hum of airplane engines overhead pricked her ears. She looked up, but the densely packed trees obscured her view. It was impossible for her to signal her presence from here. A wave of powerlessness swept over her. She needed to escape the rainforest's clutches to become visible to potential rescuers. However, the hum of the engines soon receded into silence. A gentle symphony of dripping, tinkling, and gurgling water reached her ears, a sound she had previously overlooked. Nearby, she discovered a spring nourishing a tiny rivulet. A surge of hope swelled within her. Not only had she found a source of drinkable water, but she was convinced that this small waterway would guide her path to rescue. Juliane endeavored to keep close to the rivulet's path, but her journey was often thwarted by fallen tree trunks or impenetrable undergrowth. Gradually, the rivulet broadened into a stream, sections of which were dry, making it easy for her to walk alongside the water. As dusk approached around 6 o'clock, she sought a secure spot in the stream bed to rest for the night, her dinner a single piece of candy. By December 28th, her grandmother's gift, a watch, had ceased functioning, compelling her to keep track of the days mentally. The stream expanded into a larger tributary, and eventually into a small river. The rainy season had left the jungle barren of fruits, and her candy supplies had depleted. She lacked a knife to harvest palm hearts from palm trees, and she had no means of catching fish or cooking roots. Fearful of the jungle's many poisonous offerings, she abstained from consuming anything unfamiliar, but she drank copious amounts of water from the stream. Later that day, as she rounded a bend in the creek, a gruesome sight confronted her. 3 passengers from the flight had been thrust headfirst into the soil. A paralyzing wave of panic swept over her. Never before had she witnessed the lifeless form of a human being. A dreadful thought occurred to her. Could one of them be her mother? But as she cautiously prodded one of the bodies with a stick, she noticed the woman's nails were painted, something her mother never did. A wave of relief washed over her, rapidly displaced by a shroud of shame for finding solace in such a grim discovery. Despite her diligent count, the days began to blur together. On either December 29th or 30, the 5th or 6th day of her journey, she heard a droning, moaning sound. It immediately electrified her indifferent state, igniting a surge of euphoria. It was the unmistakable call of a hotzin, a subtropical bird that nested exclusively near open stretches of water, places where humans would settle. She recognized this call from her home in Panguana. Fueled by renewed vigor, she quickened her pace, drawn towards the sound. Finally, she found herself standing on the bank of a large river, but it was devoid of human life. Distant planes hummed in her ears, but with the passage of time, their drone dwindled. She surmised they had given up, having rescued all the passengers, leaving her behind. A wave of intense anger surged within her. How could the pilots turn their backs just as she had finally reached a water body after many days of struggle? Her anger swiftly succumbed to an overwhelming despair. However, Juliane refused to surrender. She clung onto the belief that where there was a river, there must be people nearby. The riverbank was overgrown to such an extent that it hampered Juliane's progress, making it nearly impossible to navigate. She was mindful of the stingrays that nested on the banks, treading carefully. Progress was painstakingly slow, leading her to choose swimming in the river's center over slogging on the bank. Stingrays wouldn't dare venture into the deeper waters. She had to stay vigilant for piranhas, but her jungle knowledge told her that these fish posed threats only in still waters. She also anticipated encountering caimans, creatures resembling alligators, although they generally didn't pose a threat to humans. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon each evening, she sought a moderately safe place on the bank where she could attempt to sleep. The nocturnal symphony of mosquitoes and tiny flies called midges swarmed around her head, relentlessly trying to invade her ears and nose. The nights of rainfall were even worse, drenching her thin summer dress with icy droplets, and the wind chill penetrating her to the bone. Huddled under a tree or concealed within a bush on such bleak nights, she felt utterly forsaken. By day, she continued her aquatic journey, but her strength was fading. She drank copious amounts of river water, which satiated her hunger, but she was acutely aware of her body's need for solid food. One morning, she was jolted by a sharp sting on her upper back. When she touched the spot, her hand came away smeared with blood. The scorching sun had inflicted severe burns on her skin as she swam, resulting in second-degree burns. As the days blurred into each other, her senses began to betray her. Often, she believed she saw the silhouette of a house on the riverbank, or heard the distant clucking of chickens. She was drained beyond comprehension. She found herself daydreaming about food, from grand feasts to humble meals. Each morning, the task of standing up and submerging herself in the frigid water became increasingly taxing. Did it make sense to carry on? Yes, she convinced herself. She had to persevere. On the 10th day, she drifted in the water, frequently colliding with logs. It took a considerable amount of strength to clamber over them, striving to avoid any bone-breaking encounters. By evening, she spotted a gravel bank that seemed a suitable place to rest. She drifted into a brief slumber, and upon awakening, she saw an anomaly. A boat. She rubbed her eyes, scrutinizing the sight 3 times over. And yet, it remained. A boat. It was truly there. Exhausted and on the verge of collapse, Juliane mustered the energy to swim over and touch the boat, validating its existence. She noticed a path, worn from use, leading up the bank from the river. She was certain she would encounter people there, but her physical state was so feeble that it took her hours to ascend the incline. Upon reaching the top, she saw a small shelter, but no sign of human life. Another trail led from the makeshift hut deeper into the forest. She was confident that any moment now, the boat's owner would appear. However, the day transitioned into evening without any sign of human activity. Resigned, she spent another night alone. The next morning came with no change. The shelter remained devoid of human presence. As rain began to fall, Juliane crawled into the shelter and cocooned herself within a tarp, hoping to keep the cold at bay. As the afternoon wore on, the rain ceased. Her body refused to obey her command to get up. She decided to take one more day's rest at the hut before resuming her journey. As dusk painted the sky, she heard the murmur of voices. Believing it to be another trick of her imagination, she dismissed them. However, the voices gradually grew louder and clearer. 3 men emerged from the dense forest, stopping dead in their tracks upon seeing her. "I'm a girl who was in the LANSA crash," she explained weakly in Spanish. "My name is Juliane." Initially, the men did not trust her. They were scared of her at first, thinking she was a water spirit they believed in. They still allowed her stay for another night, and the next day, they carried her by boat to a local hospital in a little nearby town. Juliane was rescued after 11 perilous days in the jungle. The day after her rescue, she saw her father. He could barely talk, and in the first moment they just held each other. In the days that ensued, her father was consumed with the frantic search for news of his wife. It was not until the 12th of January that the grim reality surfaced. Her mother's body was found. Later, she found out that she also survived the crash but was badly injured and she couldn't move. She died several days later. Juliane Koepcke was the only survivor of the 92 persons on board. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.